Most students never expect a school lockdown to become one of the most terrifying moments of their lives. For most schools, a lockdown is nothing more than a precaution. A door gets locked, the lights get turned off. Students wait quietly, and after a while, everything goes back to normal. But sometimes, things don't go back to normal. Sometimes the threat is real. Sometimes the danger is already inside the building. And sometimes the people hiding behind those locked classroom doors have no idea how close they are to disaster. The stories you're about to hear come from people who experienced school lockdowns firsthand. Some were students, some were teachers, and one was a former student working alone in a basement when a lockdown suddenly began. What started as ordinary school days quickly turned into situations that nobody present would ever forget. From a screaming intruder roaming the hallways, to a disturbed man watching children near a school campus, to an armed suspect hiding in the same basement as his next victim, each of these stories serves as a reminder of how quickly an ordinary day can become a nightmare. And while all three incidents ended differently, the fear experienced by the people involved was very real. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin with a Friday afternoon calculus class that was only minutes away from spring break. A class where students were laughing, playing games, and counting down the minutes until freedom. Then a voice came over the loudspeaker, and everything changed. The moment the dean's voice disappeared from the loudspeaker, the entire classroom fell silent. Not the kind of silence that happens during a test. Not the kind of silence a teacher demands when students get too loud. This was different. This was the kind of silence that only happens when people are genuinely afraid. Nobody knew what was happening. Nobody knew why the lockdown had been called, and nobody knew whether the danger was outside the school or already somewhere inside it. The teacher quickly moved toward the door and checked that it was locked. After that, he returned to the corner of the classroom and sat with the rest of us. That alone was enough to make everyone nervous. Teachers were supposed to have answers. They were supposed to stay calm. But looking at his face, it was obvious that he was just as worried as the rest of us. Minutes felt longer than they normally would. Every second seemed to drag on forever. The room was completely dark, except for the faint light slipping through the edges of the covered windows. Some students stared at the floor, others stared at the door. A few quietly whispered to each other, trying to come up with explanations for what might be happening. Then the power shut off. The low electrical hum that had been filling the room suddenly disappeared. Everything became eerily still. A strange feeling spread through the classroom, because if the school was cutting power during a lockdown, then whatever was happening had to be serious. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. Something was wrong, very wrong. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then someone heard it. At first, it sounded distant, so distant that it was difficult to tell exactly what it was. A strange noise echoing through the hallway. Some students thought it might have been a teacher shouting instructions. Others thought it was simply their imagination. But then it came again, louder this time, and there was no mistaking it. Someone was screaming. The sound echoed through the hallway outside the classroom, a scream filled with rage, the kind of scream that immediately sends chills down your spine. Every student in the room froze. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The screaming continued, and with each passing second, It grew closer, closer, and closer. The person wasn't moving away. He was moving toward them, toward their classroom, toward their hallway, toward their door. One of the girls sitting near the wall began crying. Another student covered his mouth with both hands. The teacher motioned for everyone to stay quiet. Outside, the screaming became even louder. Then another sound joined it. Metallic crashing, violent impacts, lockers being struck one after another. Bang, bang, bang. The sounds echoed through the hallway like explosions. Each impact seemed closer than the last. Students exchanged terrified looks. Nobody needed an explanation anymore. Whatever was out there wasn't normal. The screaming suddenly became understandable, and when the words finally reached the classroom clearly, several students felt their stomachs drop. "I'll kill all of you!" The voice sounded completely unhinged, like someone who had lost all control, like someone capable of anything. One of the girls started sobbing loudly. Another buried her face into her arms. The atmosphere inside the classroom shifted from fear to outright panic, because hearing that threat made everything feel real. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a misunderstanding. There was someone outside, and that someone sounded dangerous. The impacts against the lockers stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then came the sound everyone feared most. Footsteps, right outside the classroom. Slow, heavy, deliberate. The footsteps stopped directly in front of the door. Every student stared toward the darkness. Nobody even dared breathe too loudly. Then it happened. Bang! The classroom door shook violently. Several students jumped. Another impact followed immediately. Bang! 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 The entire door rattled against its frame. The man outside began screaming again, "Open up!" The pounding became more aggressive, more desperate, more violent. Each strike sounded powerful enough to break the door apart. Students were crying openly now. Others were silently praying. Some simply sat frozen in fear, unable to process what was happening. The terrifying part wasn't just the noise. It was not knowing whether the door would hold. Every second felt like an hour. Every impact felt like it might be the one that finally broke through. Then, as suddenly as it began, the pounding stopped. The screaming moved farther down the hallway. The footsteps continued away from the classroom, gradually becoming quieter and quieter, until eventually there was nothing, only silence. But nobody relaxed. Nobody felt safe, because nobody knew where the man had gone, and nobody knew if he might come back.